The ultimate UCS Millennium Falcon. What you're looking at right now is a 20,000 piece Lego Millennium Falcon, which I built myself with no instructions over the last 85 days. Now, one of the most highly requested things to do is to compare this with my Ultimate Star Destroyer mock. And if you don't know what that is, well, here it is. So get ready, as in this video, I'm going to be doing the ultimate comparison between my two biggest Lego mocks, the Star Destroyer and the Millennium Falcon. So, let's get straight into the review and start with the size and dimension of both mocks. So, as you most likely already know, the Millennium Falcon comes in at 160 centimeters long, 100 centimeters wide, and 28 centimeters high. In comparison to the Star Destroyer, this bad boy is a solid 190 centimeters long. That is almost 2 meters. From this back point there, it is 90 centimeters wide and a solid 50 centimeters high. With the dimensions and some basic stuff done, let's talk about, how much space these two occupy. And there's a lot of differences in the two. Let's start with the Star Destroyer. Obviously, the Star Destroyer's kind of got the iconic triangle shape. Here's like a bit from the top. Triangle. And, obviously it's a lot longer, right? But I guess this is kind of due to the stand. It's also a lot taller. However, it's only wide. And I said before, the width of this was 90 centimeters? Maybe it was 90. I think so. Anyway, that is only from that point right there. Then it gets very, very narrow along there. Whereas the Millennium Falcon, the most wide point is 100 centimeters, which I'm pretty sure was from there to there, 100 centimeters. But the Millennium Falcon keeps its width pretty much throughout a lot of the set, or mock, should I say. From there to about all the way there, it's super wide and only gets a little bit more narrow towards the front. However, it's obviously not as long as the Star Destroyer and certainly not as tall because it has legs rather than a giant stand. Let's talk about piece count. The Millennium Falcon, as you can see right here, I'd say around 20,000 pieces. However, the Star Destroyer with only, I'd say around 10,000. And that's for a few reasons, obviously. One, the Millennium Falcon's got a full interior. I'll insert some interior videos now. Full interior, which is really, really cool. And go back to the main shot now. As you can see, throughout the whole thing, there's greebling and lots of details everywhere, the whole thing. Which, if that wasn't obvious, I'll say now, which is why the Star Destroyer only has around 10,000 pieces compared to the 20,000 in the Millennium Falcon. Onto the actual weight of these two massive Lego mocks. The Millennium Falcon comes in, I haven't exactly picked it up, but I can give a rough estimate of around 25 to 30 kilos, and the Star Destroyer coming pretty close at around 20 kilos. And you might be thinking, why is the Star Destroyer 20 kilos, which is pretty close to the 25 to 30 of the Millennium Falcon, whereas the Falcon has like double the piece count? And obviously, if you can hopefully assume this, you can see the Star Destroyer is made up of these giant plates, panels, and everything, whereas the Millennium Falcon, right? It does have some pretty big bits. A lot of the piece count is made up of just these little bits all along here, little greebling details, as you can see, all along there. So that's where, I guess, the Star Destroyer gets its weight from, giant plates and panels. With all the basics done, let's move into the visual side of both of these. But before we continue, here's a really, really cool edit I thought I'd just kind of throw somewhere in the video. And go.
Through the highways till my shadow turns to sun rays, and on we'll go through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
Now we're going to make a start on the visuals and all that kind of cool stuff on the mocks. Starting off with the Falcon, it's got lots of colors everywhere. Mostly light grey, you've got dark grey, you've got some dark red, black, hints of dark tan, lots of different stuff here. Whereas on the Star Destroyer, obviously it's mainly just grey. There's a couple little hints towards the back there of dark grey and obviously blue for the boosters. The only other little bit of colour is, I guess, a little tan there. But apart from that, obviously it's a Star Destroyer, so yeah, it's going to be grey. Moving on now, we've got the aesthetics, overall design and looks of both the mocks. Since it's pretty opinion-based what I'm going to say here, I'm going to try and take a standpoint from all the different possible views I can. Starting with the Star Destroyer. Some people might argue and say that ew, it's just a Star Destroyer, big grey blob. I completely understand that, fair enough. But others, like myself included, will think, oh my god, this is the coolest thing I've seen in my entire life. Like, oh my god, that's so cool. Awkward silence there. Anyway, moving on to, I guess, let's talk about the just looks overall. From a very, further away point, it just looks menacing as hell. The Star Destroyer is amazing. Such a nice display piece, just iconic triangle shape. Pretty epic, Then, moving closer, obviously you can see the kind of nice wedge plates going up there, creating the shape. You got big panels everywhere. Just the overall design as a display piece, this one's amazing. Moving on, if I didn't already mention, you've got the little tantive here. I think this is a great piece of the Star Destroyer. Just a nice little touch of color and a nice kind of add to the design. So we got the Millennium Falcon, which is very, very different. Obviously, it's a different ship, but very different from the Star Destroyer in terms of looks for lots of reasons. One, shape of it, super awkward and very unique. And obviously when you see it, you 100% know it's the Millennium Falcon, right? You've got the cockpit over there, you got the satellite dish, you got, I guess, all the little different bits and pieces. You can seeing all the different panels, really breaks up the whole basicness that the Star Destroyer has, just giant panels. And I guess those bits are separate pieces there, but the Millennium Falcon is made up with lots and lots of smaller panels and different pieces. So that's what really gives it the unique design when compared to the basic Star Destroyer. Now I'm going to start talking about the displayability of these two. And when I mean displayability, it's not like just a general Lego set. We build it, done, pop it on a shelf. Obviously, these are absolutely massive. So you got to plan beforehand where you're going to put it. Even if your shelves fit, it takes a bit of planning. So I guess I'm going to go through that now. Starting with the Star Destroyer. I have had this in my bedroom on a giant shelf ever since I finished building it, really. And it was easy and hard to display for a couple reasons, right? Because obviously, as you can see, it's pretty big. So one of the good things about displaying it, let me get a better angle to show you, is the stand here. And let me tell you why the stand is good, right? Since the entire Star Destroyer is on the stand, only from that bit there all the way to there has to be on the shelf, right? So since my shelf isn't as big as the entire Star Destroyer, it was totally fine for parts of it to hang off the shelf, which is, I guess, pretty good for displayability since I don't think many people have a shelf that will fit this entire thing. Also, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but the Star Destroyer, as you can see, pretty tall, solid 50 centimeters. So hypothetically, if you owned this, which obviously you don't, or maybe if you wanted to build a giant Star Destroyer, you need a lot of, you couldn't just put it on a shelf with another shelf above it. You have to put it on the top shelf, or you need to have a table or something because, as you can see right now, it is pretty tall. Moving on to the Millennium Falcon. Now, this might be a little bit tricky to talk about for a few reasons, and that main reason is I only finished building this a week or so ago as of the time of recording this video. And since then, it's just been sitting on my dining room table here. So I haven't had the chance to think about displaying it. Well, I've had some thoughts, but honestly, that's a later problem. Anyway, this is more of a brainstorm of how I'm going to display it, but I will say there are a couple positives to it. Obviously, it's nowhere near as long as the Star Destroyer. It's about 30 centimeters, not as long as the Star Destroyer, right? So that's also kind of good. And it's certainly not as tall. As you can see, it's got its own legs, so it's not raised on a giant stand. So that in a way is a benefit. But there is one issue which I will eventually have when I plan to display the Millennium Falcon. And that is that it is very, very wide for majority of the set. When compared to the Star Destroyer, it's only wide from kind of that point there, then it gets super, super narrow, because obviously that's how a triangle works, right? But the Millennium Falcon is really wide for a lot of it. So I'm going to have to find a giant area to, in my room, somehow display this. So I guess stay tuned to see how I eventually do that. So I just spent a bit talking about displayability and how it's going to kind of fit on a shelf. But obviously you might be thinking, does it look cool? Yeah, just, of course it looks cool. Look at it. I'm assuming this is how it's going to be if you just pretend you enter my bedroom, you see a giant Millennium Falcon there. How freaking cool is that? Now, imagine walking into my bedroom, you see a Star Destroyer. Obviously it looks so cool. So I guess 10 out of 10 for looks, obviously. Moving on, we're going to talk about action features, play features, and all that cool stuff. With the Star Destroyer, there's really not much. You've got the Tantive, which is barely ill. I broke it. Hold up, taking difficulties. Anyway, with the Star Destroyer, there's not much to go through because it's just a giant ship with not too much going on. Obviously, they got the Tantive. You can fly it around and easily place it back on like that. Then the other movable bits really are these little cannon turrets, which you can spin around, which is kind of cool. Apart from that, there's really not much with the Star Destroyer. With the Falcon, there is heaps of features. There is a lot to get through. And obviously, I'm not going to do a full look at every little action feature and play feature on this entire mock, but I'll give you a quick little rundown. I'll include clips right now from the review. And, here's a little summary. There are the removable panels, all that cool stuff. Most of the panels on the entire ship are removable. Then we got the cockpit, which couple little bits at the top, you can pull up those little bits and put some minifigs in there, which is awesome. We got the satellite dish, which you can move around, and obviously the full interior, which the Star Destroyer does not have. The Millennium Falcon has a full interior, which is honestly amazing. Moving on, we have one of the very interesting categories I want to talk about, and that is a kind of combination of structural integrity, building techniques, and I guess the design and pieces used in the two mocks. So, I hope I've made this clear. This is not swooshable. You cannot pick any of these up. You cannot fly them around. You certainly cannot pick up the Star Destroyer. If you know, you know. We'll move on from that. Anyway, the Star Destroyer, I will say, is built a lot worse than the Millennium Falcon. It's a lot more flimsy in a way. As you can kind of see, some of the pieces aren't fully pushed down. It's a little bit scuffed from here to there. A lot of these bits kind of resting on the panels, and a lot more scuffed than the Millennium Falcon. And I will say, that's mainly because this was, the first double combining set mock I did all the way back in, April of this year, or May, April of this year. So, give me some credit. This was the first one I did. But I will say there are quite a lot of bits which I'm not too happy with right now. And a lot of that stuff I'm not too happy about is towards the back, which you can barely see since the back, when I have it displayed, is pushed up against the wall. But there is a bunch of gaps there, which is really not too happy about it. But I didn't really have the pieces to fix it. I mean, I do, but I don't know why. I just never ended up fixing this giant, yucky back section full of gaps there. And overall, I guess, it's not, like I said, not built as well as the Millennium Falcon because it was my first attempt at a giant combining mock. Now, in comparison, I'm a lot more happy with how the Millennium Falcon is built. And obviously, that's me, so good job me. I used, compared to the Star Destroyer, that giant thing there, you could see the Star Destroyer is made up of 4 giant panels. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And yes, they're 4 giant panels. And if I were to change them or build this again, I'd make them lots of smaller ones connected. Anyway, the Millennium Falcon is made up with heaps and heaps of small panels, small bits you can take off, which was I guess that's how the Millennium Falcon in the UCS original set is built, but that means that it's not one giant thing like the Star Destroyer, so it's a lot more structurally integral, a lot more stable, and, you know, nowhere near as many scuff bits as the Star Destroyer. So, this is the last category or talking point I really want to have, and that is the build process, the time, and all of that, which obviously I do want to talk about for quite a bit, because as you can see, these mocks are absolutely giant. They're not something you do in a couple of days, couple of weeks. Like, these take physical, emotional, psychological months to build, right? So we'll start on the Star Destroyer. This one took a solid 33 days, a month and a bit, and the Millennium Falcon, 85 days, which is like more than double the Star Destroyer. And I'll get to why that massive time difference is right now, after this transition. The Star Destroyer, right here, as you can see, took 33 days, and it was very, very short compared to the Millennium Falcon, and there's a couple of reasons on that. So, the first one is obviously the Millennium Falcon is filled with thousands and thousands of extra little details, pieces that the Star Destroyer just doesn't have. All the greebling, all that stuff throughout the Millennium Falcon, the Star Destroyer just doesn't have. Also, another main thing I want to mention is the interior on the Millennium Falcon. That took like alone 2 weeks to build the interior. So that took ages. And obviously, as I've mentioned, the Star Destroyer has no interior at all. Also, I guess the main reason why the Millennium Falcon took more than double the time the Star Destroyer is just look at the shape of it. Look at the design, you know, as a lot of people, if you have followed the entire build process of the Millennium Falcon every day, you know the complications that happen, the trial and error, all the ups and downs of the whole Millennium Falcon stage, right? So that's, I guess, why it took 85 days compared to the 33 of the Star Destroyer. The final point I do want to make, and I do want to address, is doing this is freaking difficult, you know? It's not easy getting two giant UCS Star Wars sets. Almost, well, this is the biggest Star Wars set. This is like third, fourth, fifth biggest. And combining two together, you know, obviously it's not the easiest thing. So that is also why this takes so long, because I've got to design and build this myself. No instructions, only a vague reference from the original. So I guess that's why it takes us so long. And I know you guys all know when you've watched the series, the entire thing, the 33 days for the Star Destroyer, 85 for the Millennium Falcon. You guys know why it takes so long, because obviously I have to design the whole thing. I got to build it myself, got to test it, make sure it all works. So I guess that's really the ins and outs of it. So yeah, I guess outro time now.